Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more interesting stories like these. Now, let's get into today's story video. Ada for taking care of my ex-wife's dog for more than a year. For background, this is still ongoing. My wife cheated on me in March 2020, and we filed for divorce at that time. We are now legally separated. During the divorce, we spoke about our 3 tiny dogs, ages 12 years, 4 years, and now 10 months. We promised she would take the 12 and 4-year-olds when she could. I requested her to accept the 12-year-old dog now then, since she's a little dog with a lot of health issues. She believed she could keep her in her apartment, but the roommate's larger dog mistook her for a chew toy, so the 12-year-old was returned to her parents. I promised to look after the 4-year-old for a year while she completed school and found a better job/place to live. This dog requires a lot of room, which the apartment cannot supply. I, too, do not want to give up this puppy, but I have already committed to it, despite it not being in the MDA. She isn't paying me to care for this dog, and I believe she is taking advantage of me and my goodwill/love for this dog. She texted me today and asked if I would groom the 12-year-old. I have some nice clippers. What am I expected to say in this situation? I informed her that, as much as I loved her 12-year-old dog, she was no longer mine, and that she could pay me $20 to groom her, which I thought was acceptable for the time it would take. She is shocked that I would even inquire and responds, "Well, the 4-year-old isn't yours either." That's an excellent point. I ask whether she's going to compensate me for caring for her or perhaps attempt to take her elsewhere, maybe to her parents' place. She laughs and accuses me of being a jerk. She does not want me to keep this against her. Is it possible that I'm being unreasonable here? I wanted to keep 4-year-old for a year and propose to keep her, but I don't think it's going to happen. I believe I am acting rationally in this scenario, but it is evident that she regards me as in a whole. Story 2. Ada for accidentally calling out a new colleague on lying about her language skills. Last week, a new coworker named Kathy, 33 female, began working at my 25 female workplace. She immediately stood out among the team members since she seemed to be someone who is quite loud and assertive. My colleague Kathy and I were drinking coffee in the break room. We were the only ones there and sat far apart when the topic of travel was brought up. My coworker said that she was no longer arranging vacations since they would most likely be canceled due to COVID. Kathy instantly spoke on how sorry she is since she travels so often and does these distant strange trips to Europe as a pastime. When I think of exotic, I think of the Bahamas or something rather than Europe. Cool. Kathy then quips about how her no-travel situation is causing her to worry about losing some of her foreign language abilities. I inquired about the languages she spoke. She claimed to be proficient in 3 European languages, including French and Dutch. Kathy claimed to be at a native speaker level, and she went on to say that people in Europe were often startled to learn she wasn't from there. I was ecstatic since I seldom get to speak Dutch over here. I grew up in Belgium, which has 3 national languages: French, Dutch, my mother tongue and the most widely spoken there, and German. Because they are taught in school, together with English, from a young age, it is rather normal to be quite competent in at least 2 of the 3 languages spoken in Belgium. "Oh, that's great, then we'll have some fun," I told Kathy. "Oh, fun, we must have something in common." She instantly made a nasty expression and inquired whether it was intended to be Dutch. "Yes," I said. She chuckled nervously, explaining that she couldn't understand since I have a horrible accent and may not be that adept at saying it. I don't have an accent, as you can tell. I am more proficient in Dutch than in English. I informed Kathy that I grew up speaking Dutch and that I still do so with my family. She became irritated and inquired as to what languages I spoke and where I was from. I told her I'm from Belgium, so I know French as well, and I added which you just said you speak. Fantastic. Instead, we may converse in French. I admit that I was a bit of a jerk here, since I knew she probably lied about speaking French as well. She then pushed her chair back and stood up violently, saying whatever, and marched out. It was inconvenient. My coworkers merely shrugged and said she shouldn't have lied. She then contacted me and informed me that I had humiliated her by being superior about my European ancestry. I told her there was no way I could tell whether she'd lied about knowing those languages. She rolled her eyes and called me immature. Later, a coworker informed me that Kathy had dubbed me a little B-word who likes tormenting new coworkers behind my back. I don't believe I was a bully at all. But I don't want this to become a big deal. Do I just apologize in order to preserve the peace? Ada? Edit 1. I'm not sure whether I should escalate this to HR, as several people have told me I should. I'm afraid this will make me seem immature to the rest of my coworkers, of whom I am the youngest, and it may not even need to go that far. It all hinges on Kathy's willingness to move on and be professional. If all else fails, I have witnesses who would be honest about what occurred, so I believe I'm safe if she attempts to distort the tale. Edit 2. Some have taken offense at my use of the Bahamas as an example of an exotic location and are attempting to turn this into a racial problem. I had no idea exotic was a derogatory adjective in the United States. Do I consider the Netherlands, Belgium, England, and Norway, which you described as remote exotic locations, to be my concept of an exotic trip? No. Not because there are a lot of white people there, but because when I think of exotic, I think of a location with warm weather, white sand beaches, and a clear blue ocean. Perhaps it's because I'm from Belgium, but I don't feel that being in my own country, where it's often gloomy and wet, is quite that experience. Edit 3. Some people believe she didn't understand me since she speaks Dutch well, but learned it in the Netherlands, which has distinct accents. While it is true that the accents of the Netherlands and Flanders vary, I did not speak a highly distinct dialect like West Flemish or whatever. I taught the kind of generic Dutch that you'd hear on the news in Flanders. I didn't talk rapidly in an attempt to make it confusing in order to set her up. I honestly thought she spoke Dutch since that's what she was saying, so I addressed her in regular, conversational Dutch. The same type of Dutch I'd use at work in my own country, and the same kind of Dutch I'd use with Dutch friends, but with a gentle G, of course. Update. Many individuals advised going to HR, but others advised not going to HR since it would exacerbate the matter. I opted not to go to HR straight away, but I did write down what occurred, including the time and names of the other coworkers there, just in case. I assume the problem will resolve itself, since Kathy was probably simply embarrassed. Well, I was mistaken. Kathy continued to be unfriendly to me, rolling her eyes at me in meetings and whispering behind my back. At one point, another coworker confronted me and asked why I'd been so nasty. Kathy was apparently providing a different account of what transpired. Kathy said that I had said hurtful things to her in Dutch and was making fun of her in Dutch, which no one else could understand. She was wise enough to only share these anecdotes to coworkers who weren't present. Word spread, and it became a larger problem, with a few individuals really doubting my character, largely coworkers who don't work very close to me. After a while, HR caught wind of it, and I was called in. About a month later, they'd previously met with Kathy, who'd informed them about how she cursed me out in Dutch and was really unpleasant to me. I gave them the whole event and everything that transpired after that. They asked if there was anybody else there who could corroborate this, so those coworkers came over and informed them that Kathy had lied about knowing a language, stormed off, and then began calling me B-words and other derogatory terms to others. They thanked me for my time, and I returned to my job. Nothing occurred for a week until I was notified that Kathy had been asked to leave. Kathy had apparently doubled down on the falsehoods and told everyone I was the one who was lying, and she didn't know those languages. So my boss told her she'd have no issue speaking to one of our Canadian colleagues, who wasn't involved in the incident, in French in front of him, just to check. Kathy acknowledged she had been lying at this point. She also didn't speak a word of French, Norwegian, which was the third language she claimed to speak. This was enough for them to let her go, since one of the reasons they recruited her was because she spoke many languages and had job experience overseas. Work experiences were also made up. I'm simply relieved it's finished. I'm convinced it wasn't my fault things blew out now. If it hadn't been me who caught her in a lie, someone else would have eventually. The few individuals who did believe her eventually came to me and apologized for questioning me about what occurred, so that's all settled. Edit. Some people have asked why they didn't test her language abilities during the employment process, and the answer is because our professions don't need us to speak Dutch, French, or Norwegian. I believe they regarded that as a positive or something that set her apart from the other contenders.